Good afternoon, my dear students. Welcome to the RRR 2112. This is Disaster Readiness and Risk Reduction. Our topic is week 11. This is Geological Hazards Part 1. I am your OLC. I am Lastimosa from AMA Davao. So our learning objectives in this afternoon's session are to discuss the other geological hazards, analyze the cause of other geological hazards, recognize signs of impending geological hazards, and apply mitigation strategies to prevent loss of lives and properties. So yan ang learning objectives natin this afternoon. Okay, so geological hazards are naturally occurring or man-made geologic conditions capable of causing damage or loss of property and or life. While volcanic eruptions and earthquakes are the most known geological hazards, there are other geological phenomena that could potentially cause damage to properties and people. So in this module, we will consider other related geological hazards such as rainfall-induced landslides and sinkholes. Okay. What is landslide? So I believe alam ninyo kung ano ang landslide, no? So let us define landslide. Landslide occur when masses of rock, soil, debris move down a slope under the force of gravity. So the term landslide includes a wide range of ground movements such as rock falls, mud and debris flows, and surface failures, cold slumps, earth flows, and translational slides. And this occur in a matter of seconds or over course of weeks and even longer. So yan ang landslide. So our discussion this afternoon focused on landslide and sinkholes as other geological hazards. So what are the different types of landslides? So we have here material in a landslide mass is either rock or soil or both. So this is described as earth. If mainly composed of sand size or finer particles, the debris is composed of coarser fragments. So earth, if mainly composed of sand size or finer particles. Debris, if composed of coarser fragments. The type of movement describes the actual internal mechanics of how landslide mass is displaced. Fall, topple, slide, or flow. Okay, sa figure, we have the flow, rock fall. So, una yung rock fall, no? Okay. So, falls are landslide that involve the collapse of material from a cliff or steep slope. Yung sobrang slope, mataas yung angle, no, near 90, yun, delikado. Near 90 degrees yung slope. Falls usually involve a mixture of free fall through the air, bouncing, or rolling. So ito yung figure ng rock fall. Okay. So next is tupel. Tupel. Okay. So ito, tupel failures involve the forward rotation. As you can see, para itong sliced bread, no? It's a forward rotation and movement of a mass of rock, earth, or debris out of slope. Out of slope. So this kind of slope failure generally occurs around an axis or point at or near the base of the block of rock. So that's the second. Next is the slide. So saan yung slide? Meron tayong rotational or planar slides. Ito. And translational slide. And next is the flow. So thus, landslide are described using two terms that refer respectively the material and the movement. So yan ang pag-describe ng landslide. So for example, rockfall, debris flow, and so forth. So we have slides. Again, this is translational or planar. So this is downslope movement of soil and or rock on a plane of weak material can occur on relatively moderate to steep slopes, especially in weak geologic materials. Weak geologic materials. So, kung remember ninyo, we live on Earth, while the ground upon which we live seem to be for most part firm, stable, and static. But in actuality, it is dynamic and in continual state of flux as the lithosphere adjusts to the Earth's inner and molten core. So, affected yung geological structure. So that's why we have this landslide, no? And then we have rock falls. This is rapid near vertical movement of rocks that involves free falling. Ito yung example, no? Bouncing and rolling. Often occurs in areas with near vertical exposures on rock. Ito, no? So take note of that rapid near vertical movement of rock. Near vertical. That involve free falling. So again, near vertical exposures on rocks. Next is slumps. So this is rotational, unconsolidated materials such as soil and debris move downslope in a distinctive rotational motion, usually occurs in moderate or steep slopes. Yeah, so my surface of rupture and then slump block. So based on slope removed by road construction. Okay, so slump. Next is earth flows. This is unchannelized flow of water, soil, rock, and vegetation. Kung meron. That moves down slope. Occurs on steep slopes. Ano ibig sabihin ng steep? Sharply angled, no? Slopes. No failure surface at the bottom. So this is the earth flow. And fifth is the debris or mud flows, rapidly moving. But if earth flow is unchannelized, debris or mud flow is channelized, slurry flow of water, soil, rock, and vegetation. So it occurs mainly in drainage channels. So kung makita niyo sa figure, kasi maliit ito, no? Okay, mayroong mga transport zone. Kasi channelized ito. So unlike sa earth flow na unchannelized. Okay, so what causes landslide? Ano ang cause ng landslide? So there are many factors that may cause a landslide. Physically, there are two forces affecting landslide. They are, the first is the driving force. And the second is the resisting force, DF and RF. So what is driving force? Driving forces causes the slope to move with the force of gravity. Of course, saan papunta? Kundi sa baba, driving force. And the resisting force stabilizes the slope and prevent movement. So, para hindi mangyayari yung landslide, the resisting force should be large enough to resist the occurrence of the landslide. Or i-lessen natin ang driving force. Okay, so when the driving force exceeds the resisting force, that's that time na mangyayari ang landslide. I hope na makuha ninyo yung cause ng landslide. Now, to prevent or mitigate a landslide, one must increase resisting force or decrease the driving force. Okay, yung driving force, because of gravity, pababa. Yung resisting force, it should be up to resist the landslide to happen. So of course, ang driving force papunta sa baba, no? So dapat less ang driving force kaysa resisting force. But then pag magsobra yung driving force, that's the time na bababa yan, no, sa ground. Okay, what are the factors that increase the driving force? One is over-steep slopes. Ano yung over-steep? Yun ang sharply angled slope, no? Adding water to slope from landscape irrigation, roof downspouts, broken sewer, water lines, and poor storm water drainage. Another, heavy rainfall. So, hindi natin maiwasan itong heavy rainfall, no? So, fourth is loading extra material at the top of the slope. So, kung lagyan ng mga heavy materials sa taas, no? Okay, so pag may earthquake and heavy precipitation, heavy rainfall can also trigger landslide on susceptible slopes. So what are the factors that increase resisting force? Paano ma-resist ang driving force? First is removing excess water from slope. Dapat walang water sa taas, no? And then adding buttress material at base of a slope. Okay, so we have here a diagram. So this is the buttress beam, no? So kung may nakita kayo na may ganito, this is prevention of the damage, no? Usually sa mga walls, sa mga stockpile, no? Okay, so merong, this is the landslide prone soil and rock. Okay, so ginawaan nila ng paraan para hindi mahulog dito na part. Kasi pag wala ito, wala. Pag landslide ito dito na portion, so masira, no? Or kung merong mga communities sa baba, that would cause damage and even sa properties, even lives ng tao, no? Okay, next is building retaining walls. So, building retaining walls, yung mga wallings, no? Ayan, mga wrappings, para hindi masira yung land. So, what are the signs of impending landslide? impending landslide. So the following could be signs of landslide activity in your land area. So, by the way, isang reason bakit nalagay ang itong subject sa senior high school para awareness ng mga young students. Para at least kayo, you should be active member of the community, no? So para kung pwede, makakatulong din kayo sa community. So with your knowledge in DRRR, you can do that, no? Okay, so monitor your house and surrounding property for the following signs. Hindi yung being an active member of the community, hindi yung alam mo na may danger doon tapos pabayaan, hindi mo na ini-report sa authorities. So, being an active member of the community, dapat i-inform ninyo yung dapat i-inform. No? So, what are the signs of impending landslide? 1. New cracks or unusual bulges in the ground, street, pavements, or sidewalks. Kahit malayo lang sa inyo, no? So to prevent accident or whatever would happen. So 2, tilted or cracked chimney. Chimney yung taas, no? Okay. So bantayan ninyo yan. Doors or windows that stick or jam for the first time. 4, outside walls, walkways, or stairs start pulling away from the house. 5, soil moves away from the foundation. Lahat ito visible, no? Ma-observe ninyo, makita ninyo. So it's your responsibility to make a move, no? 6 is plumbing or gas lines develop leaks. Bulging ground at base of slope, leaning fences, posts or retaining walls. Springs, seeps, or saturated soil in areas that have been typically dry. So, ibig sabihin pag may saturated soil in areas na ibig sabihin na merong mga leakages, no? Next, cracks in the ground. Tilted trees or utility poles. So yan, kung may makita kayong ganyan, then do your part. Okay, so we have the areas that are generally prone to landslide hazards. First, on existing old landslide. Yung nag-landslide na, possible na magla-landslide pa rin yun. So that is why meron mga warnings na this is a landslide prone area, no? Para maiwasan na mangyayari ulit, baka nandoon kayo sa lugar na yun, no? On or at the base of slopes. On or at the base of slopes. Kung posible na mag-landslide, huwag kayong, do not stay at the base of that slopes. Next, in or at the base of minor drainage hollows. Kung merong hollow, of course, merong posibilidad na may yung nasa taas bababa. No? So at the base or top of an old fill slope. At the base or top of a steep cut slope. So yung sharply angled, no? Land part, or yung cut slope, no? And then develop hillside where leach field septic systems are used. So yun ang areas that are generally prone to landslide hazards. Next, what to do if you suspect imminent landslide danger. So first is to contact your local fire, police, or public works department, our local government, yung mga barangay, no? So local officials are the best person able to assess potential danger. Kasi yung sa mga barangays, merong naka-assign dyan para sa in case of mga landslide. May naka-assign dyan mga DRRM, no? DI, Disaster Risk Reduction Management. And then, inform affected neighbors. Kung merong pwedeng maapektuhan, i-inform niyo yung affected person. Kaya your neighbors may not be aware of potential hazards. Baka hindi nila alam. That is why kailangan ninyo i-inform sila. Then advising them for a potential threat may help save lives. Help neighbors who may need assistance to evacuate. So, able kayo nito. No? Pwede kayo makatulong para lilipat yung affected neighbor. And then next, evacuate. Getting out of the path of a landslide or debris flow is your best protection. And curl into the tight wall and protect your head if escape is not possible. So kung hindi kaya, no? Kung nasa situation ka na nandoon yung landslide, then all you have to do is to curl into tight ball. That is to protect your head. So yan ang gagawin if you suspect imminent landslide danger. Okay. Next is sinkhole. So sinkholes are depressions or opening in the ground surface. Sinkholes are generally formed as a result of a collapse in the ceiling of an underground cavity or cavern. Typically develop slowly but can also form suddenly when a collapse occurs. Naturally occur in areas underlain by soluble carbonate or evaporate rocks like limestone, dolomite, gypsum, and salt. So yan ang sinkholes. So what are different types of sinkholes? So we have dissolution sinkholes, cover subsidence, and cover collapse. So dissolution of limestone or dolomite is most intensive where the water first contacts the rock surface. Aggressive dissolution also occur where flow is focused in pre-existing openings in the rock. So may mga pre-existing openings sa rocks, no? Okay. Such as along the joints, fractures, and bedding planes, and in zone of water table fluctuation, where groundwater is in contact with the atmosphere. No? So yan ang dissolution. So next we have, in areas where cover material is thicker or sediments contain more clay, cover subsidence sinkholes are relatively uncommon, are smaller, and may go undetected for a long period. This is smaller, no, and undetected for long periods. While cover collapse sinkholes may develop abruptly over a period of hours and cause catastrophic damages. Kasi abrupt yung pag-develop. No? They occur where the covering sediments contain a significant amount of clay. So over time, surface drainage, erosion, and deposition of sediments transform the steep-walled sinkhole into shallow bowl-shaped depression. So, yung process, unti-unti, no? So, we have first, the overburden, mostly clay with carbonate bedrock. So, of course, no? May cavities ito. So, as spalling continues, the cohesive covering sediments form a structural arc. No? So, at first, yan pa lang. Tapos next, and next. Nasira na, no? So, cavity migrates upward by progressive roof collapse. And then, lastly, ganito na. So, cavity eventually breaches the ground surface, creating sudden and dramatic sinkholes. Ito, parang walang nangyari pa doon sa taas. No? Covered pa sa surface. And even dito, pero thin na lang yung surface. Hanggang diretsyo, bagsak yung nasa topmost cavity. Okay, so we have what is karst. So karst terrain is a type of topography that is formed by dissolution of bedrock in areas underlain by limestone, dolostone, or as in some western states, gypsum. Such terrain has underground drainage system that are reflected on the surface as sinkholes, springs, disappearing streams, or even caves. So karst is any land with sinkholes, spring and streams that sink into subsurface caverns, yung mga large caves, like itong sa underground river ng Palawan. So, yan ang karst. So, dito sa ibang figure, we have a sinkhole wherein nandito yung river, no? May stream underground. And sa baba, kung tingnan natin, merong underground caves. So once na sabay-sabay itong mag-collapse, so possible na So dapat walang mga communities on top, no? Para walang mangyayaring hindi maganda dyan. Okay, what causes sinkholes? So according to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the two most common carbonate rocks in Florida are limestone and dolomite. So these rocks tend to erode when exposed to acidic water. Erode when exposed to acid. So most rainwater is already slightly acidic. Sometimes yung mga nangyayari na acid rain, no? And most become more so by passing through decaying plant debris. Limestone is a porous rock and acidic water can percolate or can infiltrate down through it. Over time, this process of erosion has created extensive underground voids and drainage system in much of the carbonate rocks throughout the state. Sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, overlying sediments collapse into these underground cavities and sinkhole is born. So itong sinkhole na to sa figure, this happened in Cebu. No? So, malaki daw ito sa ilalim. So, marami pa dito sa Philippines, pero mga sinkholes. So, the making of sinkhole. Okay. So, human activity can create sinkholes too. For example, via collapse or broken sewer, and drain pipes, or broken septic tanks. So, improperly compacted soil after excavation work and buried trash lags and other debris. So itong mga buried trash lags would decay, so that would cause that lowers the surface part of the land. No, they can also occur from overpumping and extraction of under or groundwater and subsurface fluids. Some sinkholes form when the land surface is changed, maybe when industrial and runoff storage ponds are created. In those cases, the weight of the new material above ground can trigger an underground collapse, creating a sinkhole. So as in the figure, we look at the figure, this is man-made. Man-made activity would create sinkhole. Okay. So we have checking of understanding. By the way, yung mga assessments ninyo sa DRRR, mostly common sense, no? Ibig sabihin, madali lang sagutan yung mga assessments ninyo. Okay, let us answer this. You may use your chat. Give your answer through chat, okay? So geologic hazards have several factors that triggers its occurrence. So one common cause is the adjustment of the earth as a molten core moves. What's the answer? Okay, so the answer is true. Tapos, during landslide, A, B, C, or D, or stay out of the path of landslide or debris flow. So the answer for this is B, evacuate or stay out. Slumps, rockfall, and debris are generally types of landslide. The answer is true. Rain-induced landslide cannot be considered as geologic hazard. Can't. So this is false. Now, mud flow differs from debris flow in what way? It is composed of finer grained material. For example, a mud flow is composed of 80% or more particles less than 0.06 mm in size, while debris flow is composed of 20% to 80% particles larger than 2 mm in size. So, pag mud flow, smaller particles, yung debris flow, larger particles. So a landslide is defined as downward and outward movement of slope-forming materials. Okay, obvious pa yung answer, no? Okay, next. What type of landslide is shown in the following illustration? The following illustration, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Anong klaseng landslide ito? So the answer is B, topple. Okay, for our lesson summary, geologic hazards are naturally occurring or man-made. So, ang common, volcanic eruption and earthquakes, but we also have these other geological hazards, the rainfall-induced landslide and sinkholes, which covers the discussion this afternoon. And then landslide occur when mass of rock, soil, and debris move down the slope under the force of gravity. So, what causes landslide? Landslide are driving force and resisting force. So, if driving force is greater than resisting force, then landslide would happen. So, to prevent and mitigate landslide, one must increase the resisting force or decrease the driving force. Sinkholes, on the other hand, are depressions or opening in the ground surface, are generally formed as the result of collapse in the ceiling of an underground cavity or cavern. Okay. We have these safety precautions for sinkhole. You stay away from the property kung merong mga sinkhole, no? Determine if the hole is impacting your house. If it is, you need to leave the home. Block off the property. Do not allow anyone to go near the area. Monitor sinkhole for signs of growth and for further structural damage. Kasi yung iba, parang okay lang sa surface, but then sa ilalim, hollow na masyado. A, avoid dumping anything into the sinkhole. If anything is dumped into sinkhole, there could be a possible contamination of groundwater. And 6, wait for specific instructions from the local government, especially your barangay, agency, and insurance company. So that's all for today.